CargoWise Landside is deeply committed to revolutionizing landside logistics. With a complete enterprise system built for modern trucking and container drayage operators that includes proven drayage transportation management, digital rate and quote management, real-time container track and tracing, and on-demand truck, trailer, and container storage. Excellence in container drayage starts with the right software. Enhance transportation management, optimize shipment execution, and improve intermodal business operations with Trinium TMS, Draymaster, GeoStamp Track, and SecureSpace. To learn more, please visit cargowise.com/landside.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to TPM Today, the October 10th edition. I'm Eric Johnson. I'm your host, as always, almost always. I haven't missed a show in a while. For a while, it was like every fourth episode, it seemed to be like I was out on vacation or something and I needed a guest host. But I've been prioritizing this show in 2025 because there's so much going on and there's so many people I want to talk to. So you're stuck with me for better or for worse. I have a fantastic guest today who I've known for a really long time, like incredible expert in her field, and I can't wait to talk to her about it. Very timely throughout 2025. So that's just coming up in a few minutes. Before that, though, just a couple things. So TPM is coming up, if you hadn't heard. It'll be, as usual, the first week of March in usually sunny, Southern California, Long Beach, California to be exact. And just yesterday, we actually announced a little bit of news. Janet Yellen is going to be our keynote speaker. Super excited to have the former Treasury Secretary, the former Fed Chair speak to this event. As you know, or as anyone who's attended in recent years knows, we've shifted from just being a logistics and a shipping event to talking about geopolitics, talking about economics at a deeper level than just as it relates to kind of consumer demand. So she's pretty much a perfect person to talk about those things. Obviously has a lot of insight into how the administrations current and past have thought about things. So I think no more timely person to be kicking off the show this year. So if you haven't bought a ticket yet, there's, I think, 3 weeks left of advance rates. Highly recommend you do that because ticket prices go up after that. Inland, you heard me talk for weeks, if not months, about Inland. We had Inland last week in Chicago, which was spectacular, by the way. Probably the best 3 days I've ever spent in Chicago weather-wise. But it was also an amazing event, record-setting attendance. We had just an awesome event, really. I mean, we had Jim Venna, the CEO of UP, talking about the acquisition or the merger with Norfolk Southern. He was a blast. He had an amazing one-on-one with my colleague, Ari Ash. Just a fantastic week, really, honestly. Thank you so much to everyone who came and supported it, all the speakers. Just pretty much flawless event from my perspective. It's going to be bigger and better next year, so make your plans right now. Last week of September. I think it's the 27th through 29th, but I'll get those dates for you soon. Back in downtown Chicago. All right, really quickly, I wanted to highlight a story that we posted yesterday. This was actually based on a conversation that I led at Inland about the impact that technology providers are having on the sort of constantly overlooked truckload appointment scheduling problem. Great discussion. We talked about a bunch of different things, but primarily it was about prioritization. Are certain shipments or loads being prioritized over others in situations where actually, one load needs an appointment, another load might need that appointment or could actually flex to later in the day, but it takes it because it's a first come, first serve kind of situation. We talked about how it's really important when you have a broker, a shipper, and a carrier all involved in coordinating this, and a receiving facility sometimes as a fourth party, how someone needs to take the lead, but everybody needs to be connected. And then we also talked about how it's important to measure the performance of appointments. So not just have the capability to set them, but then see how well it worked. Was it actually 60 minutes or did it take 90 minutes? Did the driver arrive on time, but it took them an hour to actually get unloaded? So they sort of wasted their time, all sorts of things. Really interesting discussion. We're starting to see some actual progress in this space, which is fantastic. It drives efficiency for everybody. It's a problem that everybody benefits from solving from. So really excited to have led that discussion. Definitely read the story. It's a good encapsulation of a much deeper conversation, which you have to register for Inland if you want to see that deeper conversation. So with all that said, I am really delighted to have on, I think for the first time, my friend Gabby Griffith, who's the director at a company called BPE Global, which I've known forever, like literally probably most of my career. I'm going to have her introduce herself in a second, but Gabby, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. So good to see you again, always.
Yeah, you too. You too. You did an awesome JOC webcast with us a few months ago. So we have so much to talk about. But first, just give people a little background on yourself and what is BPE Global? Who are your customers? What do you help them with?
Yeah, so I'm a director here at BPE Global. I've been here, I was counting in preparation for this 9 years. And prior to being at BPE, I managed in-house global trade compliance teams across Latin America, Europe, APAC, across large high-tech sectors and commerce companies. But I started as a baby trade compliance person over in Department of Commerce and States. So I've been kind of around all the directions of this specific sector. BPE Global is a 21-year-old woman-owned, woman-led global trade compliance firm. Our customers are importers, exporters, law firms, VCs, really across all sectors, and we work with all of them to help guide the complexity, the patchwork that is import, export regulations, sanction regulations. So yeah, we've been a little busy lately, but it's.
I was going to say, is there any complexity going on in that part of the world?
Yeah, no,
I haven't heard anything. So
people know what I do now. You know, that's the echo chamber comment of anybody in our industry, right? It's like, yeah
for
I've
sure.
been in this industry for a long time, and it was glazed donut, blank stares. But people want to talk about this now, so.
Well, in a former role, I worked really closely with BP, including Gabby, on benchmark reports around trade compliance, and it's really interesting because I sort of moved away from that professionally. I didn't put it aside, but just it was deprioritized over like pure transportation, logistics kind of things that I cover primarily now. And it was interesting to like go back in my memory banks to that and how us, through these reports, we were like, make sure you're paying attention to this. Make sure you're paying attention to that. Do this proactively. Don't wait for an audit. Don't wait for a penalty until you do this. And now we're in this world where like everything is sort of broken. The volume of workload is out of control for most people. So I wanted to sort of start off by saying, can you help contextualize how much someone that you work with, or just sort of a trade compliance person within an importer, like what is their day-to-day look like this year versus a quote unquote normal year, whatever that means?
Oh my gosh, their day-to-day. So I think if I had to boil it down to kind of the two data points that an importer has had to live, breathe every moment of their life this year, it's tariffs, and it's what we would call the stacked layers, the ad valorem complexities. So if we had to strip back and set, the context of an importer, I think that's synonymous with tariffs. Obviously, it's hard to talk about one without the other, but those are the two main levers. So when I say a tariff number, that's the USHTS that's taken from that harmonized tariff schedule. So as context, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this book when it's all printed out, but it's about 6 feet wide when it's all printed out and racked. It's a very large book full of numbers. On an average year in 2023, it was updated 4 times. It has been updated 25 times, fully new published versions 25 times just this year. And usually it's in a full year updated 4 times with not really that significant of changes, but 25 times just for the tariff numbers themselves. So as an importer, number one, you've had to pay attention to, are my goods properly classified? Because that tariff number is the foundation and root of all of the other stacked layers that you read in the headlines that gets stacked on top of that. And that's that second lever is, okay, in an ordinary world, we would have a standard duty rate tagged to that specific tariff number. That's kind of all you have to worry about. Is it coming from a country with a trade agreement? Cool. Now we have this tariff number linked to the standard rate of duty. Depending where you're getting it from, you have stacked layers of Section 301, Section 232, anti-dumping, which was has always been around, but there's this, not only this consideration of all these extra stacks that you have to think about to get to your landed cost, but all those stacks are moving. They get changed depending on the trade negotiations, depending on, so many factors, which I know we're going to talk about
thing
today.
happens that affects
right. Yeah. So it's just, every morning you wake up and it's like, okay, has anything changed today? So an importer is having to keep like really their eye on both of these, any new tariff numbers, any new changes, because again, that is the number one factor that determines the ultimate landed cost, that is driven by what else gets stacked on top of it, and have any of those stacks changed.
So that 25 update number is something actually I've been using a lot, and this just shows how fast it's moving. I've been presenting on kind of like how chaotic it's been from an importer perspective, and the number I had seen was 23 updates in 39 weeks, but that's now obsolete, and now it's 25 in 2 weeks or whatever it is. So fascinating. It's really hard. I think the work is so specialized, the compliance professionals do. It's hard to give people context for what their normal is. So I think that's probably the best number I've seen in terms of just how much upheaval there's been. And I think the other thing, that my favorite like cliche about the trade compliance world versus like the logistics world, and we have people who listening in who are on one side or the other, or both, is I've always looked at logistics as cooking and trade compliance as baking. Like, you have to get the measurements exactly right, or the whole thing falls apart. Whereas logistics, you can kind of fudge your way around and make it work, add a little extra salt at the end, and it's fine. But so if there's so much at the foundational, the regulatory level that's changing, it seems really hard for me to imagine that people get it right all the time, when it was difficult to get it right when things were relatively stable.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I think a lot of people who know me well in this industry will laugh at you using that analogy, because I use cake and recipes more on the export side of the house, but I would even expand on your analogy to logistics, to importers. If we're baking, those tariff numbers, what we see in the logistics industry, or folks who aren't as deeply familiar with in the importing community with how these numbers work, it's set forth by this global, the World Customs Organization, and there's a very specific set of rules. So we're not just baking, but we are like working with the ingredients and representing and attending these meetings in Brussels, that people sit in a room and have these conversations about how should we add this product to the tariff? Do we need to break it out when new nascent products are created in our worlds? Like, the smartphone didn't have a designated number for years. Like, I wish I had the actual data point. I think it's close to 15 plus years between.
It's like when Merriam-Webster adds a new
exactly
word, right? Because it's now part of the world, right? Yeah.
So it's this whole, there's a lot of, baking and like ingredient and science happening in the background, that it's very nuanced. And we see that mistake with the importers. They're like, okay, how can I get, my product on that annex list? Because as those layers start coming out, so do the exceptions, and so do all the carve outs. And so obviously from a business standpoint, you're like, I want the lowest rate, and that's a low rate. So, can my product be this tariff number? And then we have to go back and say, well, no, because there's these rules, or yes, we can, if we, take a risk and take a position that we can back up with diligence and reasonable care. So it's an interesting kind of navigation, because historically we would just follow the rules set forth by the World Customs Organization, tag the number, get your duty rate, and off you go. Yeah. And now it's more of like this engineering kind of concept of, okay, let's look at it from a more strategic and like business pragmatic way, but it's not something that you can just take and, see a low number and be like, that looks good, I'm going to do that. So here we are.
I wanted to touch on the IEPA side. call it the saga. So for people who are not familiar, this is the act under which the administration has that feels it gives them the power to assess the reciprocal tariffs. It was so those tariffs came out in April. It was challenged, I think, in fairly soon after. They were struck down by the International Court of Trade, if I'm not mistaken, in July. Appealed by the administration, which I think was granted an injunction to keep the tariffs in place until, I don't know, until that appeal decision was made or until it went to the Supreme Court. I lost track of this, but give us an update on where this is right now.
Where's the saga? I always say, we are in flux. So we are waiting for that final ruling from the Supreme Court. So tariffs remain in effect. The Court of Appeals found them illegal, remained in the case for further consideration is what you'll read. Oral arguments are scheduled to be heard early November. I believe it's November 5th. So
before the Supreme Court.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So that if the Supreme Court agrees with the lower courts, then it will rule that IEEPA is not a justification for assessing these tariffs. What do you think is next step? Now, bear in mind, Gab's not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. Please go see a lawyer if you actually have legal questions, but we're just trying to give some guidance on where things are.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was like, oh, that makes me nervous. So yes, and as you can imagine, we get this question all the time. So yes, if it's struck down, the plan is that that the tariffs would be eliminated and that there could be retroactive relief. So in the crystal ball, what do we see that we don't live in a crystal ball world anymore. What we have heard as like a best practice and what we're kind of commenting on is that if it is struck down, the administration, and I think they can try to reimpose them using other levers, right? Like there's 232, there's 301. So I think if I put my importer hat on, which we've been running models with our clients on this, it's have your foundation in place, right? Like know your tariff hit. If it is retroactive relief, get your house in order that you know what that means and how you can go get that retroactive relief if that is how one avenue ends up panning out. However, just know, because we had someone forecasting, kind of betting their chips that it is going to be rescinded, that it could always come back under the 232 or 301, and we don't know if that would be what that runway time would look like. We don't know if it were reinstated under one of those avenues, if it would be retroactive. Like we just don't know. So it's not like because we're hearing like, oh, I can't wait until November 5th. And like, I'm crossing my fingers, but it's, that's not necessarily the end of the road if it ends up favorable to importers. Yeah.
The 301 and 232 tariffs, which most people in the import world are familiar with because the first administration enacted tariffs under those statutes. Mm-hmm. Do those require congressional approval in ways that IEEPA didn't, or can those be put through? Because we've seen a bunch of announcements around lumber from Canada, 25% on trucks made outside of the U.S. I'm losing track of all the different
pharmaceuticals,
robotics, right?
Yeah.
Right. So would those need this like a different mechanism that might be longer before they're actually in place than the IEEPA ones?
They can go into effect as quickly. So we are currently in a comment period for those, but it's still the pragmatic advice on the ground is to just brace strategically in terms of looking at your supply chain and bracing strategically, because those historically have come down. Thinking about what they're predicated on is national security and our intellectual property. So.
Yeah, I think the best sort of advice that I heard from an importer was like, treat this like some sort, like if the court legal actions are favorable to importers, treat it like an unexpected windfall and keep it in a separate account almost.
Yeah.
Rather than being like, oh, now we're going to get paid back all this money that we shouldn't have paid in the first place. Go like, no, have a strategic account in case, right? Because it doesn't seem like the desire to raise overall tariff levels is going to diminish over the next 3 to 4 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
You should probably have an ability to pay those, whether in some form or another, right?
Exactly. And we've been working, and seeing importers less current, but last spring, I'll say, just looking how to forecast, like how do I forecast out 2026, 2027, and it's interesting to kind of see the split. But what we've really noticed and seen in practice is just forecast for the worst case, and anything other than that, it's just set it aside, put it in a good investment account that compounds, because it truly it's a challenge to run a business in this climate. So
so I think one thing that's come up a lot this year is the extent to which import teams have sort of had to carve out a certain amount of time, or if they don't have enough people, enlist the help of people like you, or if they don't have enough expertise in-house, or attorneys, or some sort of consultant. There's resource and there's time that's been spent on what happens if tariff goes to this? What happens if tariff goes to this? What happens if I have to move sourcing location of this product to this? What happens if this FTA gets renegotiated or wiped away, right? Like USMCA coming up for renegotiation next year. Yeah. Crazy how little there's been discussion about that, considering everything else. How do you advise clients to stay sort of proactive, but not like get so bogged down with the what if planning that it becomes like an actual measurable impact on their bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, are you talking about just how to be proactive but not just overreactive? Like
right. I think that's the thing that I hear a lot of shippers struggling with, and they sort of throw their hands up at some point and say, I guess I'm just paying what I'm paying now. So
I know. And it kind of comes back to that first context that I was talking about, which is get your foundations right. Like that tariff number is everything, because what we see in the exhaustion of importers is they just have like either thrown caution to the wind and are chasing the lower tariff numbers for the lowest impact of the extra duties, or they are just not really making sure the foundation is solid. So it's the cliche thing, which is, don't be hasty, don't make hasty moves. That is because we've been seeing that not pan out well at all. Back in 2016, we saw importers shift entire supply chains, out of China into Vietnam. And now it's that hasty moves like that we're seeing like this trickle down effect. So I would say the advice for importers, there's a lot of great resources out there that, I have a punch list that I'm happy to provide, or if you share any information after this of areas, certain alerts, subscribe to certain sites, like how to kind of patchwork together your own news feed, so to speak, because I am very much in the weeds on this. And when I see headlines of our main media, it's represented differently. So I think there's a really solid kind of patchwork of alerts of certain companies that are doing a great job pushing out detail for companies that just don't have the resources to kind of chase all this by themselves. So I think it's one, keeping your eye on what is happening through really knowing where to look for it, and being very diligent about collecting a comprehensive picture of what is happening in the trade compliance arena. And then the second is really taking a beat to look at your foundations and think about, are my tariff numbers the best they can be? Can they be engineered at all? Because I'll reiterate, like that tariff number drives everything, the domino effect of all those extra stacked tariffs on top of it.
Right. I wanted to touch on CBP because I see on LinkedIn, I see in stories, I see in chatter at events, like the sort of narrative is that CBP is scrutinizing things to a degree that they've never done before. And obviously they have I think they feel they have a mandate to do that based on the sort of administration's stance on trade. Are you seeing that at a ground level sort of experience, that CBP is looking at things in ways or at a comprehensive way that they maybe haven't in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So internally at CBP, their data analytics are, I don't want to say unprecedented, but CBP has, I think I hear importers make comments about CBP, it's the government, it's CBP, blah, blah, blah. But there's actually been quite an enhancement of their data analytics and their tools that they are using to comb shipments to target on investigation. We're seeing CBP, not just on the importer side, but on the exporter side, hugely as well. There's been an increase in enforcement on the Office of Export Enforcement funding there to work with CBP to get to those analytics. So I would say that it's kind of like a yes and no, because we have certainly seen an increase in some of our clients and the importers and exporters we work with getting, requests from CBP, those CF28s. And it's been interesting because it's always like, how do they find it? And then when we get into conversations, we're finding that the data analytics have changed. I know of a few companies that have been working systemically on the back end to help, augment their data analytics. But also no, because with the de minimis going away, CBP's also just been crushed, right? Like they didn't have that infrastructure, and it's interesting to see kind of this calibration effect come into play where all of the unprecedented crush of those types of shipments. So
hundreds of millions more shipments now.
I mean,
of entries.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. So it is a yes and no, but I do know that systemically there are enhancements, and they're certainly, it's not just anecdotal.
So real quick, I would say the feedback I've been getting from your peers is the tools CBP has at its disposal now, and that they're leveraging are, to your point, like a step change above what has happened in the past. Can you just explain to people what these CF28s are?
Sure. Yeah. So customs, if they have a question, they will issue a request for information on a form called the customs form CF28, which is the request. And then the CF29 is their notice of action, meaning you use the wrong tariff number. You claim this was country of origin Taiwan. It's actually country of origin China. Here's what you're going to owe us, right? That's a notice of action. And there are avenues to protest that and correct. But I would say the plug for CBP, when I see an importer who doesn't have access to their automated commercial environment, ACE, I hope that is a baseline thing that everybody listening can know about. But the ACE system is the system of record that importers and exporters have access to monitor all of their shipments that are cleared through CBP. So it gives you eyes on what CBP is seeing, so you can run your own analytics on, okay, let's make sure all of my country of origin on my shipments looks up to snuff, because that's the type of analytics that CBP might be looking for. The algorithms are looking for a tariff number paired with a country of origin. So if they are looking for steel, tariff numbers that are flagged under steel, and your country of origins or your weight on that steel, all of those that data, when your broker is inputting all of your data for your shipment into the automated commercial environment, that is what prompts all the algorithms and the data analytics. So that goes back to, what can you do right now? Get access to your ACE account. It's a free tool, little tricky to navigate, but once you get over the learning curve, it's fantastic.
Yeah. It pays off in spades.
And I feel like I took a hard right there, but the ACE tool and just having access to that to see the data analytics is huge, because that's kind of and back to the CF28, you can turn on an alert there so that CF28s and 29s that are issued to your company come directly to you or to a team at your organization, because there is a specific response window. You have 28 days to reply to those requests. And if you're in a snail mail environment in this world, that's not enough time. So
yeah, I will just briefly say, I was at a meeting with a bunch of shippers in the last couple of weeks, and someone brought this up and asked, has anyone not received a CF28 recently? And no one raised their hand. So like everybody, to the extent that this used to be a sporadic thing, and it's now everybody is affected by this thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, real briefly, last question. Who's your favorite band or musician, and why?
Oh my God. Depends on the day, but I have to say that Metallica is the perennial favorite band, because when I had my first kid, I didn't know any bedtime songs, and the only thing I could think of at that time, I remember being in the hospital, is Enter Sandman.
Wow, that's pretty hard to sing.
I mean, I lullabied it, but it's yes, I think that there's always a time for a Metallica song. I think Fuel is probably playing in the background right now as my kids are getting ready for school. It's a perennial. Always appropriate.
That's a perfect music for trade compliance world these days. So,
100%.
What's the best way for people to reach you? Yeah.
You can find me on our website, bpeglobal.com, or LinkedIn, Gabrielle Griffith, bpeglobal.com.
Highly recommend doing that. Gabby's top of our business. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Super informative. I really appreciate taking some time. All right, we're overtime. Sorry, Nicole. All right, dad joke of the week really quickly. Why is a cucumber scared of being pickled? Because it's a jarring experience. Wouldn't you be scared too? Wow, I didn't realize it was so funny. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Really, really obviously informative and timely discussion. I could have had Gabby on probably at any point in this year post February, and it would have been timely and interesting, but it's especially interesting right now. Pay attention to that IEPA case coming up in November. That could change a lot of different things, at least for a short term. Register for TPM. Advanced rates are ending soon. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for Gabby for an awesome conversation. Bye.